Hey folks, thanks for tuning in to the latest episode of Vinyl and Vision. Here we are with episode 98. Today's very special guest is Brian McSweeney and Shawn Rios of the band Miirrors from Chicago. Miirrors is a pretty cool band. I don't really know how to describe it. It's a beautiful production, and with it being hard to explain, that kind of says a lot about it. I think that it's very thoughtful, methodic music as far as the way that they made it. How they write, how they kind of put the entire album together. The new album is called Motion and Picture, and it's not a concept record, but I feel it definitely has a theme to it. Title being Motion and Picture, the artwork, which we described kind of in detail in our conversation, as far as what it looks like and why, the inspiration behind that. There's a theme. It's I don't know. There's definitely this connection to motion picture. Motion pictures as in film and cinema. It's a pretty great piece. What you're listening to is one of the songs off of that album called Gunshot Glitter. At the end of the episode, I'll include a short clip of another song called Night Walk. Vinyl pre-orders are being taken now through Pravda Records. I will provide you links in our show notes for that if you're interested in picking up a copy, because like I said, it's going to be a pretty beautiful presentation, and the audio quality and like the songs itself, the album, the actual content of the record is pretty great. So if you like what you hear, then I would strongly recommend you go check it out now. It is available now, streaming everywhere, so if you care to hear the album in its entirety, I'll provide you links to that too, so you can just stream it for now and hear it. Album of discussion tonight is Air's Talkie Walkie. Interesting choice, definitely connective tissue between what Miirrors does and what Air is, and obviously both Shawn and Brian are big Air fans. A little hard to talk about this record just because there's not a lot of information about this record specifically available online, but I made do. I found some pretty fun, interesting facts, and it was a pretty great talk. Just as a warning to you folks, there's a little bit of a technical difficulty that we had during this conversation. Shawn had some technical difficulties near the beginning, so I think it's somewhere around like the 25-minute mark. You might hear a shift in sound quality, and so it's not that bad, really. It's really not bad at all. Worked out pretty well. These guys are pros, because they made do very nicely in the crunch, and it actually made a still perfectly coherent conversation, and it was great. It was easy to work with as far as presenting it to you today. I thank you folks for tuning in and listening and watching wherever you are doing that. All that we ask is that you please, if you haven't yet, do all those things you do with the internet: like, share, subscribe, comment, rate, review. We do appreciate it, absolutely. And if you care to help us out in a monetary way, you can do those in a couple of ways right now. We actually have our online store and our website, psychostatic.net. Links to the online store are on that website, and whatever. And we also have stuff for sale there. I'm doing an in-person pop-up with the Rock and Roll Yard Sale again, this time in Providence, downtown, May 6th. So I'll be out there in person if you care to come down, show your support, buy some records. I always have good deals, so I would appreciate if you come down. It's always a good time. That's it for now. Enjoy. Hello, Brian.
Yeah, can you see me and hear me?
I can now, yeah. How are you?
Great. Doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing okay.
So where are you based? Vinyl and Vision?
Yeah, Rhode Island?
Okay.
Yeah.
What city in Rhode Island?
Well, I technically live in West Warwick, and no one knows anything about West Warwick, so you can just say Providence. It's kind of like what the
Okay.
bands do, it's just like, oh, we're from like Somerville or Worcester.
Sure,
It's like we
sure.
say we're a Boston band, you know. So Providence
Yeah.
is like the capital city here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been there a few times. I work on the road when I'm not making music. I work on the road for bigger artists as kind of like guitar tech, backline tech.
Oh
And
yeah.
one of the artists that I've been guitar tech for since 2015 is Mary Chapin Carpenter. And
Mm-hmm.
we do a lot of East Coast stuff, a lot of like, New England stuff. And we've definitely done Providence like a handful of times, maybe even Warwick. I don't know. We've kind of been all over the place.
Yeah, yeah. Mary Chapin Carpenter. Why does that sound so familiar? What did she do?
Well, she was really big in the mid 90s, like when Vince Gill was big. She was on Columbia and had like four or five massive radios. She was like Americana before Americana was a term that anyone used. Like she had
Hmm.
like country music, like pop country music kind of played her hits, but she
Yeah.
was never really country.
Huh.
But after that, she continued to make a bunch of albums that exist kind of in the Americana folk world now. But like when we do dates, like we'll do dates with Emmylou Harris or Vince Gill or like, Lucinda Williams or uh, Brandy Carlisle. She just kind of exists in that world. But she's
Oh, okay.
she's a huge artist, like a legacy, I'd say, Americana artist.
Yeah, I definitely like know the name. I'm just and like I know if I put on a song of hers, I'm sure it'll come to me, be like, oh yeah, okay, I've definitely heard this or whatever. But
Yeah, again, like her biggest radio hits were like mid 90s, so it's been a minute, but you would probably recognize some of the big ones if you heard them.
yeah, yeah. And so you're still working with her?
I am. This is actually my last year. We are doing about 9 weeks all together throughout the year of dates, and yeah, it's been a cool gig. Like
Hmm.
I've worked for a bunch of different artists over the years, but this one is really nice because it's like I'm her guitar tech only. I'm not taking care of everything on the stage. So it's
Yeah.
like four acoustic guitars and like she's really sweet and it's a small group of people, so it feels personal and you really get to know people.
Yeah.
It's
That's
cool.
very cool. Oh, Sean's in the room
Hello.
now.
Hello.
All right, here we go.
Hey, Sean, how are you?
How are you? Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, where are you? What's going on?
I'm downtown. I just have a client issue right now, but it's all good.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, yeah, so I've just been kind of chatting with Brian a little bit here. The first thing I'd like to figure out is actually what is your positions? Because I'm not familiar exactly with whether what you guys do in the band.
I sing and I play guitar.
Okay.
I'm a drummer. Brian and I sort of, for the first record, we sort of wrote a majority of it and arranged it and produced it together.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, because I mean, so your band Miirrors is first of all based from Chicago, right?
Yes,
Yep.
sort
Yeah.
of.
Yeah.
Sort of.
One of
We're sort of a geographical split where multiple bandmates live in different places.
right, but you two guys are the backbone essentially of this group. Right.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So the other members, I'm not familiar with them either. I mean, I hate to seem kind of unjust to them and not kind of share their names, but I mean, there is a core group now that you actually have, like you have a band.
Yeah, we're a five piece, and there's myself, there's Brian, there's Andre Miller, there's Dimitri Rakuba, and Patrick Riley. Patrick has been the most recent person to join the group about 2 years ago.
Right. Right. But so you guys credit yourselves as kind of the basis of the band. I mean, so is that because you guys are the primary writers?
We were in the
I
past. I
would,
mean, Shawn and I kind of put
yeah,
together really the first album. Patrick really didn't play much on if anything, actually, on the
no, he
first
didn't play on
album.
the record. Yeah,
Dimitri did a considerable amount of overdubs on guitar, piano, some other instruments. Andre played on one song on the album, Sinistry. And now I would say since we finished our first album, in our rehearsals and in our writing sessions, we have started to write together as a band, and that's been a different process that has yielded, kind of different vibes, but it's
Hmm.
it's it's been really cool and refreshing. It's definitely like a bit of a departure in the best way possible.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, so it wasn't kind of by design that you two were the kind of creators of the band, the originators, the songwriters, if you will. I'm not sure exactly how you would describe it, but let's be, but it's specifically like if you research anything about Miirrors, it's like you two are the band essentially.
Hmm. Yeah, that's the way it was for a handful of years, just because we hadn't put a band together yet. Shawn and I started playing music together. Just we'd been friends long before we were a band. So we got together, started playing music, and songs came very quickly. So we thought, let's just start recording this stuff. We both, had several years experience of touring, being in bands, recording in studios. So we thought, let's just start making this stuff. And we did. And we kind of built the band as we were going, but we didn't really let that, stop us from moving forward on, in making the music that we started to make.
Right.
Yeah, to
Right.
be clear, like it was an interesting process. The band was built around the record conceptually. The band was built around what we plan to do in playing live. Now that we have a band, it's a different process because as we write material for the next record, we're writing together. We're not just basing it on Brian and Shawn sort of putting the pieces together. The pieces have been put together. So now it's a different writing process. Now it's a different sort of representation. But in terms of the way that things came together for the first album, where we've come to this point, it has started with the friendship that Brian and I have, and sort of flowered from there. And now it's it's exciting. It's a different thing, and now we're hearing it differently, and the songs are being approached differently. Even stuff on the record as we're playing it live, it's growing, and it's exciting.
Yeah. Okay. So going forward, it will not be you two. Maybe it'll be, you'll kind of be billed as a five piece, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
For
absolutely.
sure.
There'd be a five. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's cool. Because, kind of making a comparison to the album that you have chosen to discuss today, Air, the band Air, which is a French electronic band and is essentially kind of like what we're talking about as a two piece. Um, in the studio and on the road, they have people join them, and it's kind of like a revolving cast, it seems. But essentially, those two guys that make up the band, Nicholas Godin and Jean Benet, what's his name? Jean Benet
Dunkel.
Dunkel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Dunkel.
Yeah, those two guys are the band essentially. So I was trying to
Correct.
see if that was the same thing for you guys, but obviously it's you're developing more than that now.
I wouldn't say that that's a terrible example, and it's funny. I didn't think of that when we were selecting the album that we both were into, but that's not a terrible example because Shawn and I mean, especially in the writing of the first album, and I would venture to say that this will not change so much, but in the writing of the first album, we really began with the skeleton of the songs, which is the foundation, like a rhythm. And then I had a guitar and I would play, some sort of chord bed. And then I'm writing a vocal melody. I mean, that's really that's the bones of it's the bones of a lot of the songs. And in
Sure.
the new recordings, you know, a few of the songs they might come from different places and everybody is contributing and writing their own parts and we're making it our own. But very often still Shawn will begin when we're writing with just like we'll take a break, he'll go sit down behind the drums and just start just playing a pattern, just like in his own world, just start playing a pattern, just make something up. And then maybe I'll walk up to the mic and just start singing a melody over it and kind of respond to what he's playing. And it has been very it's been working. Shawn and I kind of like we never get together where we don't write something when we work like that.
Right.
You know, we always come up with something. It's kind of crazy. Like there is no writer's block. It just happens. Um,
It always
and
and I think when you do that, I think there will be writing from a dual perspective, and that can be something we can always bring to the band, and vice versa. I think there's, now Dimitri sends us demos, Andre sends us demos, Patrick sends us demos, and they're all being considered. It's fun, but I think that lack of writer's block will always exist between myself and Brian, and I don't see that not stopping. I don't see a time when Brian and I still won't intentionally get together as a duo just to write and see what happens. I think that will still continue whether we're a five piece or not. That's fun.
yeah,
It's kind of liberating.
Right.
and like
Possibility.
Nightwalk, for instance. Nightwalk is a song that came from a seed. It's really the only song on the first album that came from a seed that wasn't something that Shawn and I started writing, and that was like a piece that Dimitri had written based on kind of a little keyboard, maybe like a bossa nova vibe, like progression, but it still went through the filter of the band and through Shawn and my sensibilities, and was reinterpreted into something that, you know, sounds more like Miirrors. And I imagine that that's going to continue to be the case with any ideas that come. You know, the sonic footprint will will be a Miirrors. It will be Miirrors music.
Hmm. Okay. Well, so let me get a little bit of history from you guys. Like, Brian, would you like to start? Like, where did you grow up, and like, what was music like in the house?
So my parents, I grew up in West Virginia, and my parents were in a Southern gospel band, like a family band. My dad's mother and father were a part of that also. And when I was very young, I remember touring and singing in churches, you know, all over the region. I remember being in recording studios when I was 2 and 3 years old, singing on my parents' albums. And music was just everywhere. Like my toys were instruments, and I remember going on road trips and harmonizing with my mom and dad
Hmm.
when I was three. You know, like that was it was just around. And then growing up, I grew up in church. My dad was a pastor, so being around groups of people like regularly who are all singing together, you can't help but like, you know, develop sensibilities when that's like a regular part of life.
Yeah, right. Well, and so with that being said, I mean, growing up in this kind of religious background with your father being a pastor, even, I mean, what was music like in the home? I mean, did you, I mean, aside from what you're making or what your parents would make, like, did you get like exposed to any rock music or anything like that?
For sure. Like, I mean, they played gospel music, but they also listened to Neil Diamond. That was like the big one. But they listened
Hmm.
to Neil Diamond and other music like Bread, um 70s stuff, like smooth, kind of soft 70s music is what they were into.
Sure.
But when I was in high school, I mean even before high school, when I was in junior high, I was into rock music. I mean big time. And I mean I'm not embarrassed to say, but I was into glam rock, you know, like Poison, Motley Crue. That's
Oh,
just
yeah.
like what I cut my teeth on, you know.
Sure.
Um, Poison, Motley Crue, Steve Vai was like my God. Like as a guitar player, I just like it was unbelievable. He was the reason I started playing guitar, just what he did with the guitar. I'd never heard anything like that in my life, and it was so interesting. And he was such a showman also, and I really loved that about him. I think
Hmm.
that sense of like show is is lost on a lot of people now. Like it's not gone for music, you know, like it's
Sure.
still there in concerts, but I feel like the pageantry has been lost a bit since like the 80s.
Hmm. Well, you also kind of have like maybe a preconceived notion when you start seeing people or a band or a musician that is kind of a little showy in that sense, you know, kind of like they get kind of labeled as some kind of um I'm not sure. I mean, like I can only think of like a popular musician example, kind of like a Steve Vai or something, is just like, you know, this kind of guitar virtuoso, someone that kind of specializes in something, you know,
Hmm.
it's kind of a little like that's kind of maybe becomes the focus of what the show is, you know, instead of like, hey, this is a whole group, this is a collaborative effort, this is like about the music, it's not about this person necessarily. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Sure.
So, I mean, I don't know. It's like if someone is a focus in that sense, maybe it becomes more about them and their ability, maybe.
Well, sure. I mean, I just, you know, up until that point, I had never heard a guitar sound like the way that Steve Vai made the guitar sound, and that
Hmm.
fascinated me. It made me want to start playing guitar. And I did, and not long after that, like you're totally right. Like he played guitar for and produced an album for Whitesnake,
Okay.
like I don't know, very long time ago. And I saw that concert, and it definitely like everybody in the band had that was back when like everybody had their own solo section of a concert, but it very much
Hmm.
was like a band of virtuosic players, you know.
Hmm.
But then not very long after that, of course, alternative music came out, and it really did become like, grunge hits, and it's like it very much becomes about the band and about the song
Hmm.
instead of the virtuoso player, which was a real breath of fresh air for me because I was never as good as Steve Vai, and I just didn't have to do that anymore, and it made me
Right.
happy. I could just play bar chords. Nirvana was the new. Just let's learn 5 chords and get a distortion pedal, and we'll be good.
Right.
And to me, at that point, it became more about songwriting for me than like trying to shred on the guitar.
So you were learning from Steve Vai primarily? Like when did you start playing
I mean,
guitar?
it wasn't quite so much. It wasn't just Steve Vai. I started playing when I was 15, and maybe it was 14. And it was really like over the summer. I listened to the radio constantly. So I mean, it started with Steve Vai, but it was like anything on the radio. Like mostly over the summer after I got my first guitar because you have nothing else to do. I played sports when I was younger, but I kind of when I got the guitar, I backed off because music was more important to me. And I just remember like having my double cassette tape recorder boombox in the yard as I would play with my brother, and just listening to so many songs, like constantly all day songs on the pop radio station, which
Hmm.
was pop rock at the time because that's what was popular. But just like running over and like I would keep the tape player on record pause, and as soon as a song that like spoke to me would come on, I would just go record the song, and then I would listen to it and rewind it and pause and rewind and pause and rewind for hours, just like
Right.
teaching myself by ear how to play what was on the radio.
Huh. Oh,
And
that's
that might
interesting.
be Julian Lennon. It could be like, Duran Duran. Like, I mean, there's so much. It was really the mid 80s to
Right.
late 80s. And there were so many, and there were so many like songs and hits that from artists that like you wouldn't even know the name or that were maybe one hit wonders. But
Yeah.
just the songs, I feel like that was when I really like fell in love with songs. The late mid to late 80s was just like such a rich time for songs for me.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's when I got into playing, just like constantly rewinding and pausing the cassette tape, and like learning what I was recording on the radio.
Shawn, how about you? What's your background? Where were you from, and where'd you grow up?
Born and raised in Chicago, I was not raised in a musical family, but I wish I was. At the same time, I was really spoiled by the fact that a lot of people in my family were into a lot of different types of music at the same time. So while I would spend Fridays with my grandparents, they were into big band music, Duke Ellington, Benny Goodman, Louis Armstrong, Glenn Miller, especially Glenn Miller, because they met to Glenn Miller. And then my mom had raised me on R&B, disco, soul music from early 60s to early 70s. At the same time, my brother was into metal music, the late 70s going into the early 80s. Also Jimi Hendrix, Iron Maiden, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, a lot of Led Zeppelin. I think by age 5 or 6, I had most of their lyrics and Bonham breaks memorized in my head, at least before I started playing.
Hmm.
My cousin Shawn and my cousin John, brother and sister, were getting me into early house music, early dance music, America Top 40. So I was learning the value of a pop song while learning historical context of Black music, while learning what was happening in England. All this was together at the same time. I would say probably between the ages 4 to 13. It was like really concentrated. That was sort of music school for me. And that
Yeah.
was even before I was a player of my own. But the interest was there, the obsession was there. And then when I started playing music, when I started playing drums, I was a late bloomer. I didn't have my own kit until I was 16, but I started playing on other people's kits and playing on things and creating my own things to play on. But I already started seeing like punk shows and basement of churches. Oddly, that's where the punk shows were at. That's kind of where they've been for a long time,
Oh
which I
yeah.
find interesting. So yeah, so that's when I figured out that that's when my involvement in that was to be something more permanent,
Right.
more of something that I saw myself doing when I was older.
Right. Now you mentioned a lot of influences like between those ages and four to 16 of like all this music you were getting turned on to.
Correct.
Why drums for you?
I would say probably because of two things. My brother Lou, really early on at age 4, got me into Led Zeppelin. So of course Bonham's going to stand out to you when
Hmm.
you're in 1980, I think the year he died. And number two, because my stepbrother at the time, Bryant, began to physically show me what it was like to hold drumsticks, to play things,
Hmm.
what a rhythm was with your hands. He was the first drummer that I ever met. It was my brother Bryant. Um, my mom was the first person to teach me what a beat was, what a count meant, what a beat, what a rhythm meant. I remember being in a car with her. I think I was getting out of ice skating lessons, and we were on Addison, heading west towards California over the bridge over the Chicago River. And I remember my mom. I was asking her, "What about soul music? What made that move? What made the beat? Like, what a beat was?" I kept hearing her say the word, and when she explained it to me, it hit. We were listening to Donna Summer,
Hmm.
and so applying that to hearing Zeppelin, while at the same time my brother Brian was getting me into just playing in front of me, was seeing it exampled, and that really sort of began the the cornerstone, the foundation, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, let me just say I love you drumming. First of all, I've been
thank
listening
you.
to your new record, which is out now. Motion and Pictures is the name of the new full length, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So
Motion
yeah, I've
and
been listening
picture.
to it.
Yep.
I love it. I mean, first of all, I'm kind of like partial to drummers at this point in my life. Like they stand out to me the most when there's a good one. And so and I aspire to drum like well. So it's really a great piece when it comes to a lot of the percussion that you do.
Thank you.
Um, you're welcome. I mean, and the whole album, not to just not to include you, Brian, in that, but I mean, I think the whole album is a great piece,
It's all
really.
good.
Yeah, it's a really great record. I think I've listened to everything that you've released so far. So you're very much correct where you when you said earlier that like Miirrors kind of has like this sonic footprint. You guys like I think you guys know exactly where you want to be when it comes to when you write stuff.
We do. There is
I would
intention,
say
absolutely.
more than we know where we want to be, we know where we don't want to be. We're
Hmm.
willing to like entertain any sound or song or idea that maybe we haven't explored before, but as soon as it crosses a line into a territory where we're like, no, that's not us, then we're pretty quick to shave things off.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. So now, no, I asked you here to discuss an album to you that you think is important and influential to your art, and you guys chose Air's Talkie Walkie
Absolutely.
from 2004 is when it was released, I believe, right?
Yes.
Yep.
So now, first of all, this is always difficult because when there's more than one person, that means you must have reached this choice together.
Yeah. Yeah, we did.
So how did you do that?
There were contenders.
Of course.
Jeff Buckley's Grace. Um, Dove's Lost Souls, 2001.
Oh, that's a good one. I haven't thought of that one in a long time.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's another one. My Bloody Valentine Loveless, which, by the way, these are all up there with that,
Sure,
but we
there. Yeah.
chose for specific reasons. But yeah, I would say My Bloody Valentine's Loveless. I would say the latest Slowdive record. I love all their records. But Air, we hope, returns to make another record. We hope they come back to do something. I'm
Hmm.
not sure if they will. I don't think anyone's sure if they will.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
Yeah, what an album. I mean, what a career. What an interesting group. What anonymity in a sense. I
Yeah,
like
it's true.
I like that. You don't see them on Page Six. You don't see them on TMZ. They're not married to celebrities.
Yeah.
Not to say that that should set the standard for anonymity, but I think that they're just so interesting to us, and they're so thoughtful in the way that they approach things. Right?
Yeah. Okay. Brian, how about you? What made you agree to choose this record?
I think it's an album that a lot of people don't. I think it's a lesser known album than maybe some of the other ones that Shawn just mentioned.
Hmm.
And Air is probably my favorite. I mean, if I had to pick one, they're probably the artist that, that I would say has influenced me more. Like my favorite artist of my life. If I had, and
Hmm.
again, that's a big statement, but I would say it would be Air.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's for me why I wanted to go with this album. Well, not this album. That's why I wanted to go with Air, this album in particular, because it's like hands down my favorite of their albums, and I think it's a masterpiece, like a just straight up masterpiece for so many reasons.
Hmm. Okay.
Um, yeah,
Wild. All right.
I feel like the production is perfect. The performances are perfect. I think there is a perfect marriage, which I think we hope to reach at some point. There is a perfect marriage of organic acoustics and electronic ideas.
Hmm.
There is this cinematic landscape that doesn't require a voice at all times. And how interesting that when the voice does enter, it has a very feminine character to it.
Yeah.
It's so interesting how things blossom, and they're very romantic. They're very romantic in their French nature and the way that they describe their music, but they're very romantic in the way that the songs unfold. They're not requiring traditional pop arrangement. They're not requiring things to be shortened or things to be wrapped up in a 3-4 minute package. And yet they have those songs as well. But even those songs take you to places that you wouldn't expect. It's
Hmm.
interesting. They're
Yeah.
very, very smart. They're very smart in the way that they analyze what they're doing as they're doing it. And I love anytime I get to see an interview with them, I learn something new about them every time. But that record is the masterpiece for me. I think Love 2, Brian and I always sort of debate about this one. Love 2 is interesting. I love that album so much, and it's a different sonic palette.
Hmm.
But man, yeah, I think Talkie Walkie is the best record they have.
Hmm. Okay. Now, I'm not very familiar with this band. I mean, like, I know that I've heard their music, and especially after kind of researching this album specifically, I did realize I went back into their catalog. I listened to Moon Safari, and I was just like, oh, I do know these songs. I've definitely heard these before. Um, but it's interesting because like they're a good band, but I just didn't really know it very well. And so it's always interesting when I get to speak with some people and they bring a new album to me. Um and so trying to be analytical about it, this is a difficult record. Um Research wise, very little to really go off of on the making of this album and anything about it really. Like it seems that everything about Air's past primarily focuses on other records. So this is a little difficult. This was a little challenging.
I
Now
think
why do you think that is? Because you seem to be big fans of the band itself and all of their records. So I mean, like where do you think this album falls in their entire discography? And like why does it seem like it's kind of like the lesser known?
why it's lesser known, I am not sure if it. I guess it is lesser known than Moon Safari. Moon
Hmm.
Safari was their kind of big breakout album, which was pretty, which was pretty accessible. Kind of existed around the time of like 07 when this like trip hop thing became a thing, you know? I
Mm-hmm.
think it was a marriage of like Shawn said, like electronics and like ambient acoustic instruments.
It's
Um,
interesting because when you listen to them, you're hearing the scoring of a movie that doesn't exist yet. That's what it feels like all the time. You feel like
Hmm.
you're in the movie that they're scoring. They're scoring the life that you want to live. They're scoring a moment that you're in. It's a lot of bands don't do that. They have their song, they have their purpose in the song, the lyrics identify that, and they do it quite well.
Yeah.
But with Air, it's like you feel like you're in this real passionate sexy introspective moment. It's so interesting with them, and the use of strings and the use of these sort of cinematic qualities. You can almost see act one, act two, act three.
yeah.
It's just so narrative without having to push a lyrical storyline, and
Yeah.
I
I went
think that's
back today.
amazing.
Sorry,
Oh,
sorry.
go ahead.
I went back today and I listened to the whole album and like I think what's super interesting to me, it just reminded me like their first album is very it was the very popular album, but
Hmm.
then the follow-up album 2001 10,000 Hertz Legend was like really, it really didn't do well with their fans at all. It's very jagged and very experimental. It's a really long album. It's pretty dark.
Hmm.
It is.
It
Yeah.
definitely doesn't follow like the same sort of pop sensibilities. And I think Talkie Walkie came around and just was a marriage that like it brought back some of the pop elements and some of the really beautiful, easy to digest elements of Moon Safari, but kept some of the technical, like, I mean, Radiohead did this, when they wrote a bunch of hit songs. Well, they wrote one big hit song, and then they made the Bends. Yeah, the Bends,
Yeah.
which was a songs album. And after that album really just kind of propelled them into a new level. That's when they started, by virtue of like spending a lot of time in the recording studio, using the studio as an instrument and really digging into the technical aspects of recording. And I feel like Air did the same thing with
Hmm.
Talkie Walkie. And like, go figure, Nigel Godrich he'd just made his fifth Radiohead album when he joins Air for this album. And to me, that's kind of that marriage. And like you had mentioned earlier, James, like they had a revolving touring cast, but they all came together on this album. And I myself also, like, I love percussion. I love drummers. Like, I write to drummers. And Brian Reitzell and Joey Wernicker are two drummers who have performed and recorded with them in the past, who both made appearances on this album, as did Jason Faulkner, who toured with them as a bass player. He was a member of Jellyfish. Talk about like pop sensibilities,
Hmm.
like it just the combination of those players and Nigel Godrich and as a producer, recording engineer, I think just brought this album together in a way that like, and like also something that I thought about it, like I was just thinking, how would I describe to someone who didn't really know Air, specifically this album? It's a elegant, like a simple complexity.
Good
Like
word.
you
Elegant. That's
listen,
true.
like Walkie Talkie particularly, like there's nothing in these tracks in a way that I think is unique to this album. Like they 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 kind of do this throughout their catalog, but especially in Talkie Walkie, like there will be a song like Mike Mills where it's just like a complex, like a classical keyboard line played on an electronic piano for 5 minutes, and then there are these variations that kind of change. They do this a lot where there will be like in where there is no necessarily verse or chorus, there will be a movement that happens, and then it will repeat, and then it will repeat again. And as it repeats over the course of 4 or 5 minutes, other instruments, like an instrument, will rise and come up and take a place of prominence where something else will kind of disappear, and you only ever hear three instruments in the whole song.
Hmm.
And it's just brilliant. This album
Yeah.
particularly feels, from a production standpoint, very empty. But what
Yes.
is there is so sophisticated and so smart and so well recorded. And the chord changes and the chord modulations are are just incredible. Gosh, I mean, I went through song by song, and it just like I took notes on every single song and why I loved every single song, and it was
Oh
such a
wow.
refreshing thing to go back and listen to this album.
Huh.
Another thing I think is super interesting is that when people are talking about Air's albums, they often they refer to Talkie Walkie as their third album, but like they completely leave out the Virgin Suicide soundtrack.
Right.
Correct. Correct.
Was that before talk? That was before
Yeah.
Talkie Walkie, right?
Yeah, that
Like
was the
that's an
first.
album. That's just straight up an album,
Yeah.
and
Right.
it's like, as is in true Air fashion, each of their albums, and this is another reason why I think they're my favorite band, is from one to the next, they're so different. They
Hmm.
put you in such different spaces,
Hmm.
sonically and emotionally, and yet there are threads that wind through their whole
Sure.
catalog.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like what you were saying about like the music being seemingly sparse and kind of seemingly easy. Like if I had to sum up this record, because this one is the only one I really listened to, recently. I will explore the other ones, down the road. But I definitely, upon listening to it, thought to myself, if I had to describe it in a word or maybe two, I'd say simple and smooth. You
Yeah,
know,
Sure.
because like I mean seemingly, because like you're right, I think deceivingly it's those two, but I think that it's obviously way more complex than what you kind of just catches your ear when you're upon listening to it.
Hmm.
So let's go ahead and try to get into this record a little bit. Like I said, not a lot of information about it, so kind of hard for me to kind of come up with a lot of stuff about it, but we'll go ahead and start off with the first track on the album, Venus.
Venus, to me, this one is one that's an example of, pardon me, there's not really a chorus per se, but the pattern repeats three times, I think, and with a break about 75% of the way through the song for like a short instrumental break. But when you listen to the instrumentation, it does build through the song, and there's like not an obvious bass in this song, which I love. Just like when doves cry, like there's no bass in that song, but it doesn't matter, you don't miss it.
Mhm.
And I think there are some low end elements in this song by the time it gets to the end, but there is no
Mhm.
apparent bass in this song for at least half the song.
Yeah. Okay. That's an interesting observation. I don't think I made that. I forgot to ask you before we started this portion of the episode where how did you find this album?
I was just super into Air when it came out. I had heard Moon Safari and Virgin Suicides, and I'd been into them for a few years. And then when this one came out, I was super geeked out, especially upon learning that Nigel Godrich had produced it.
Oh, okay. So you were like right on this as it came out.
Yeah.
How about you, Shawn?
for me, it was interesting. I knew and loved Moon Safari. I did not put the pieces together that essentially Sofia Coppola was responsible for not only Virgin Suicides. I mean, I knew that she directed Virgin Suicides. I didn't know that she collaborated with Air to create that score. So it was sort of like, oh, wait a minute, I didn't know that. And I also, because Virgin Suicides sounded very different, like Brian was saying, everything that they make is different one record to the next. So there was such a contrast with Virgin Suicides. It was like, holy shit, okay, they did that. That makes sense. Oh my goodness. And then she did Lost in Translation, which used Girl in Kyoto, which I didn't know was an Air song until I bought the record. And
Hmm.
it was like, wow, okay, so this makes sense.
Oh,
Here's
okay.
the palette, here's the menu. This is what they're capable of doing. This is their spectrum. This is how they can score film, and this is how they can write a pop song.
Right.
And I was in there. I became
Yeah.
obsessed.
So from what I gathered, it's certainly a beautiful song and very lyrically simply stunning. Um, Now it says to me that it's kind of the story of a relationship, like someone's obviously like kind of affection for another person. It's a loving relationship and will foreseeably be an eternal one. Obviously not in a romantic way, but in this way, I see your relationship. I see your relationship as a similar thing, like this kind of lovingly and blossoming relationship between you and Shawn, Brian and Shawn, um, as a musical collaborative. So would you agree with that?
Um, yeah, yeah.
Like you guys are in a loving relationship. I mean, being in a band is a very strange thing because it's kind of like it is very much a relationship. It's kind of like a marriage, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think from what I gathered about the relationship between Jean Benoit and Nicholas, that they also must have some kind of loving relationship together, you know.
I think they do. From anything I've seen, I really think that there is a genuine um, collaboration, brotherhood, long time union there. I don't know how they could survive that long without it. But yeah, Brian has been a big part of not just my musical life, but I think development going into young adulthood into now. I mean, we met, 22, 23 years ago. So
Oh,
yeah,
it's been that long. Wow.
yeah, we met on an airplane, I think in 2000, 2001.
Okay.
So yeah, there's been a lot of growth. We've seen each other's failures. We've championed each other's victories. And now we happen to feel like this is one of those victory moments together.
Hmm.
And that's different. That's something that we're really proud of. And we get to do it with our friends. That's great.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I mean, like, now Air seemingly is not together anymore, or something's going on where they're just kind of not working on anything at this moment. That's correct. You guys are Air fans, so I think that you would know better than
Yeah.
me.
No, there's so much curiosity about what they're doing right now. No one knows. I probably go online once a month to see if anything's coming out, to see if anyone's reported anything, to see. I know that they still have their studio.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't Atlas Studio, I think it's called, and I don't
Yep.
know what they're doing. I don't know if there's any films with their work. I do know that they've worked several times again with Charlotte Gainsbourg, and they've worked with a few other artists in terms of production or adding to their music. But in terms of a proper Air record, I have no idea. I was just talking to Patrick Riley about this too the other day. I mean, no, in our band, and he's a massive Air fan. He has all the records well and knows everything about what they've done sonically, how
Hmm.
they've done it. I don't know. I don't know. And I
Yeah.
really hope that they return. I really do. I
Yeah.
wish I could
I mean, Jean
say
Benet,
something.
it seems like Jean Benet's been releasing and promoting a lot of music in the last several months. I think he
Right.
maybe released a solo album or something. He's been pretty active. But I mean, they do have what, 7 studio albums? So like at least 7. So I mean, it's conceivable that they just, are taking an indefinite break.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
also like arguably Ache, because they have that magnificent record, which also ties with Walkie Talkie. They have the first Charlotte Gainsbourg record called 555, which the lyrics are written by Jarvis Cocker, music written and
Right.
recorded by Aaron Nigel Godrich, and Charlotte, of course, is the singer. And it's interesting hearing her sing over their music because she's the closest uh, human to sort of sound like their more feminine voice when they create their own records. It's interesting. It's almost like she personifies that sound that they went for so long on their albums. Or I
Hmm.
shouldn't say for so long, because at that point that was a year after the Walkie Talkie.
Right. Right.
Um,
All right. Well, so now,
or
now,
Talkie Walkie, sorry.
sure, sure. Now I remember. So you said that you guys have known each other for like 23 years or so, right? Around
22,
that.
23. Yeah.
Did you start like making music together like around like immediately upon meeting, or how
No,
long did that take?
not at all. We became sort of fans of each other. We just sort of kept each other on each other's radar. And Brian was in a different band that was touring and making videos and stuff. So I became a fan. That was the beginning of my relationship with Brian, was more of as an admirer. And then as we became deeper in friendship, he would bounce music off of me. He would send me demos all the time, not really having the intention of me being a part of it, just listening to him as a friend and hearing what he's doing. And I would
Hmm.
hang out with his band, and sometimes I'd lend them gear, and sometimes I'd help them get ready before a studio session. And sometimes I would go in the studio. I would say probably 6 or 7 years into our relationship is when I would start hanging out with Brian and maybe do a couple demos of something that he had going on for something he was working on. We
Hmm.
didn't start playing together intentionally until around 2014.
Oh,
And
okay.
that's when things began to have some
Yeah.
sort of, oh, what are we doing? A direction to it.
Right. Right.
I
So
had moved around quite a bit. I was living in Arizona, then I was living in Nashville, and at the time, I was in Nashville, and my wife got into graduate school in Chicago. Um, so I started coming back up to Chicago, and I had lived in Chicago for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years prior to that, and a lot of my friends, I mean, most of my friends had kind of moved to the suburbs and started having families and stuff, and Shawn still lived in the city, and it's like, man, let's hang out. And we'd not really spent a lot of time playing music together in the past, just for the reasons Shawn mentioned. We were both in other bands and stuff. So I would come up to visit Emily, and then we'd start playing music, and then we just started writing super proficiently and prolifically, and we just never stopped.
Yeah, interesting. So that probably has something to do with like how like the strength of your existing album. You know, I mean, obviously the long time together, the working, the collaboration over the years, and so forth. It's like
Shared
you guys,
sensibilities. Yeah.
yeah, you guys certainly know each other at this point.
We do. We
Yeah.
do.
Okay. All right.
But
Well, let's
yet
keep
there's
on. Let's keep on
still
moving.
room.
I have one more question I'd like to make sure I get both of you involved in. We're going to skip down to the song "Universal Traveler."
Oh my God, yes.
So, I mean, it's a kind of typical take on a desire to travel and explore new places, but with a little bit of a sci-fi twist to it, which is kind of very much an air thing, I think. Would you say that's why you got into music, to travel, to tour?
No, not for me. For me, it was more about how was I going to express myself when I felt so insecure as a kid. I didn't feel the room to do it. I didn't feel that anyone would hear me. I didn't think anyone would believe me. So for me, it was like, what do I have to say about the things that I see around me? That was the first thing that moved me about music in terms of like an intention to play it. Brian?
I think having just grown up around music, and I found that it was just such a part of my life that I could just imagine myself doing it, because I thought, I know about this, and I think we were all looking for meaning. And I just remember thinking when I was a young teenager, just considering for 5 minutes, and then like that was it. I just remember thinking like, this seems like something I could be good at, and I enjoy doing it. I I could visualize it. I could visualize it working and
Mhm.
being like real for me in my life. Unlike being a football player, or like a politician, whatever. This was something I could visualize the end to.
Right.
And and I really loved rock music, and yeah, I've always personally like been someone who I love to travel. I'm a wanderlust.
Hmm.
And I do enjoy the touring exploration part of making music. Um, this song in particular, to speak to the song, I think one of the coolest things about this, as soon as the track starts, there are a few bars where there's just this percussive element that's just like clicks, dun, 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 this syncopated click before even the acoustic guitar kicks in, and you feel like you're on safari.
Hmm.
There's like this wild feel that you're like in the jungle or something. Like, and it's evoked literally with nothing else, but from nothing else, but just like a few clicks on this little wood block or something. And I think that's so cool that like instantly you can be transported into this feeling that takes over your all of your senses from just hearing a few clicks of a wood block.
Yeah, that's pretty great. Huh. I mean, and so, and to, to speak to your experience, I mean, like, from what I'm learning, having this discussion with you, I mean, ever since you were a young child, you already had this knowledge of like kind of traveling and playing music kind of in a nomadic sense, right?
Sure.
So, I mean, then
Yeah, my
do you
parents
guys?
had been traveling regionally. It was kind of something I was used to.
Yeah, right. Now, and so, I mean, so it didn't necessarily inspire you to be in a band and try to aspire to be a traveling band, but I mean, do you guys plan to do any touring on the new record?
Absolutely. Yeah. Actually, we're setting up
Yeah.
those dates now. We can't really announce anything yet, but there will definitely be east route, west and south, and north and northeast. And
Yeah,
there's, yeah, no, absolutely. This year is going to be very busy, and I'm assuming next year as well.
right. Okay, great. Yeah, well, I look forward to it because I mean, I love to catch the bands as they're coming through the area, and so if you are coming through Rhode Island, by all means, let me know.
No, we
Definitely.
absolutely. I mean, the closest place we are to you, if not there, then we'll definitely,
Yeah.
because you seem to really care about the things you speak about. You seem to care about music in a way that we do. So I'd like to
Yeah, well, I'm a
continue that.
musician. I'm a musician and I
Yeah.
love music. I've been a music fan for a very long time. So I mean, yeah. I mean, and I know that what it's like to be a band on tour and so it's difficult, regardless of how much support you might have. I mean, it's the more people you can get out to your shows, the better. I mean, that's what you're hoping for, getting in front of people, right?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, Universal Traveler for me is that's my probably my favorite song on the record, the most listened to. I'm obsessed with it. Brian's right. It makes you feel in the beginning like you're on safari. And I think a lot of their music has that sort of safari edge to it. They do it by making animal sounds in some of the records. They do it by percussively using a shaker in a way that they have it panning across it. You feel like you're about to go on some type of an excursion. You don't know what it is. But there's also this sort of fantastical, you're right, sci-fi, sort of spacey universe element to it that just makes you feel so dreamlike. And I've listened to that song with the sun going down in LA by myself, on Highway 1 going, or actually on the 5 going south towards La Jolla, towards San Diego. And it's just so dreamlike in that setting. I've also listened to it here on Lakeshore Drive. I'm looking at Lakeshore Drive and Lakeshore Drive at 3:00 in the morning heading towards downtown. It's just, you feel like you're being shuttled somewhere.
Yeah.
It's just such a beautiful way that he speaks about the relationship with people in his life, past, present, and future. And that's just so interesting to me. And it sounds so hopeful.
Yeah.
It's just a beautiful romantic piece. It's a perfect song. It really is.
Yeah. Agreed. Brian, did you want to cut out now? Do you think that now is a good
Yeah,
time?
I think probably better go ahead and do that. And I apologize for having to duck out. Most of our interviews have been right at an hour, and
okay.
I really thought we were going to be done, but I really appreciate your thoughtfulness. And
I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't
I'm really
realize.
bummed because
No,
this
no,
is
no,
like
no,
a really
nothing,
good
nothing.
interview. This has
Okay.
been super fun, and I really wish I could stick around for the rest of it. Like, I really love when we can go in deep like this.
Yeah. I mean, if I
I
had known
did
that you
take
had
the time this morning to
yeah.
write out, just some thoughts about the whole album. So I'm also happy to send that to you just to, just if
Okay.
you want to have it, just
Sure.
song by song, like kind of a thought, like thoughts on all of the album. So I'll send that to you as well. But thank you so much
Actually,
for
you
your
know what?
time.
Can you
Sure.
send that to Shawn, and then maybe he can share some of that
Yeah,
with me as we
for
kind of
sure.
continue down the
For sure. Yeah,
list.
I'll do that right now. I'll email that right now.
Okay. Well, it's been great meeting you, and I'm sorry
Yeah,
that
you too,
we can't
James.
continue, but best of luck to you. All right.
Thank you, James.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Shawn, so yeah, so that'll be great that you can at least share some of his thoughts, even if he can't be here. Let me see. I'm going to give him a minute to get that to you, just so that when we skip on to the next song, if he has something for it that you'd like to share or
Sure.
that you think that you can share,
Yeah.
then you can have it.
I'm also very aware of the things that, certain songs that he does love about it. So I can try to chime in the best way
really?
that I can.
Okay.
Yeah, we talk about this stuff all the time. I mean, it's just
Right.
sort of an obsession.
Sure.
We talk
Sure.
about a lot of records this way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny when you're in a relationship, like in a band with people, you can tend to obviously discuss your influences, maybe even like while you're working on something. It's just like, hey, can you think about that Air album and think about this song for what we're working on? It's like kind of that thing. It's not trying to deliberately lift anything, but that's kind of what influence and inspiration is all about, right?
Yeah, there should be no like protectionism on things like that. I think everything's, as long as you're honest in your own approach, there should be no stealing. But I think there's nothing wrong with progressing, advancing the form, and
Mm-hmm.
well, people pass off torches for a reason. The torch just has to stay lit. That's the most important thing.
That's a very good analogy. I like that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so let's move on to the next song, Mike Mills.
Yeah.
What's the matter?
It's interesting. Yeah, I mean, Brian was right. There's really minimal layers in that, and they have these little suites, these little sections where things come in, and you're like, wait a minute, what? There's whistling. what's happening here? It's
Yeah.
there's I think there's banjo.
Yeah.
There are the elements that you would never even expect Air to do at that point, and you can really hear. That's the one vibrant song on the record where you really hear. There's so much fun being had.
Yeah.
There's got to be laughter in the studio when they're making some of this, because some of it, I don't mean to say that Air writes tongue-in-cheek material, but they really take things to like a character level at times with each other. And I would imagine with the people they play with. So it's a lot of fun to hear it. But yeah, I love that song. And again, it's I don't think there's any lyrics, so there's nothing.
No, there's not.
I don't think there's anything. Yeah, there's nothing. It's just another sound piece that some of it sounds like it can be for a commercial almost.
Well, it's funny. I think now I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that in my research, this is the song that there was some speculation as to whether or not Air was approached by Madonna to contribute a song to one of her records.
Really?
Yes, and I believe it was this song that they submitted to her, which she was going to use, except for the fact that they mentioned it in press that they had this thing going on with Madonna, and they submitted the song, to which Madonna's management and publicity freaked out on them and said, "You can't leak information like that," and they dropped it.
James, well done, man. Well done. I had no idea. And I'm trying to think in 2004, like where she was in her career. What record is that?
I think it was what was it called? Western something? Western.
Was that Western music?
I think so, yeah.
I think it's Western music. No shit. Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, it's the French have always had this and the English have always had this fascination with 80s Madonna, with Madonna as a character in America, as being this sort of symbol of what we hold as like, the upper echelon of pop music.
Oh man, well, she's like the queen of pop, essentially. I mean,
absolutely. So yeah, that's so, God, that's cool. I mean, I like that Madonna record. I like that Madonna period. I mean, she was coming off Ray of Light, and all these really cool, interesting things were happening still, and she was learning to play guitar at that point. So that's interesting that she would gravitate towards Air.
Yeah. Now, so I mean, as far as I remember, I'm pretty sure that's correct. I did not actually write down that note, but because you were saying that, it just sounded like so funny, because it obviously, like with what you said, I feel like maybe that was their inspiration. They kind of were writing it for a different purpose. It's not like they were writing it for themselves.
Correct.
So that would kind of maybe explain a little bit of the different kind of instrumentation and the different feel to it.
Wow.
But
you got thinking. I want to play it again when I hang up the conversation.
Sure. You can listen to the Madonna record too. I'm not familiar with it, so I have no idea.
That's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to sort of A/B where if there's any kind of a thread.
Okay. All right. But cool. So now Mike Mills, I mean, it's very curious, like, why is this song called Mike Mills? Who is Mike Mills? And so forth. So it turns out that there are a few famous Mike Mills.
Well, there's REM. There's the director, the film director. I would lean towards the film director in terms of purpose.
There's both of those people, but there's also a third, which is an actual longtime artistic collaborator with Air. Someone that has actually done a lot of their artwork, like the cover of Moon Safari, the original cover of Moon Safari from like the original demo release, right. He also has done a couple of music videos for them.
So Mike Mills, the director, did not direct those videos. It was a different Mike Mills.
Right. There's a Mike Mills that is an artist and like a graphic illustrator and so forth. And so this person, Mike Mills has done a lot of artwork for Air in the past, awkwardly enough or oddly enough, not on this album.
See, this is so interesting to me, and I want to explain something too, because they've been so anonymous, because their sounds and their process has been so mysterious to Brian and me over the years. I've made a conscious effort to not try to try to not research every detail. I research their past. I research their involvement to sort of that Versailles college music scene of hanging out with Tomat Mars from Phoenix and those guys and Cassius and Daft Punk, and they all knew each other and played in the same bars and were addicted to Prince and country music and stuff. But there were things I didn't want to know everything about them, but at the same time, now that we're in it, right, I love this. This is great. This is a great conversation. This is entertaining for me because it's just so exciting to still learn stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Years later, you
And
know.
like I said, this is a hard record. I mean, there was very limited stuff I could find, but that would happen to be one thing that I found what I just
That's
thought was pretty
cool.
interesting. And then so I mean, it leads me to wonder, like, I mean, and you don't have anything to contribute to this. You can't answer this question, but it's just like, why would you call this song Mike Mills? You know, after the artist that you worked with. Like, I'm just it's just curious thing, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it could be something like as simple as a playful inside joke with their collaborator, or it could be,
Maybe, yeah. Or maybe in
yeah,
dedication to him, maybe they just kind of wrote a song and said
yeah,
that this one's for you.
and they just called it Mike Mills.
Yeah, right.
Love it. I love it.
Well, so considering what we've learned about the Mike Mills in question here, who do you look to for your album artwork?
Oh, well, this latest record, for motion and picture, when designing it, I wanted to pull from a few feels, a few things that I experienced growing up. Um, my love for early 80s cinema when it was shot in film. When you look at Adrian Lynn's work, you look at early Ridley Scott work, early John Carpenter, not only the work itself, but the credits and the way that the credits would move and the way that they would use the font. We used Albertus for the font for the record. It was a very common font used between those directors in the early 80s, late 70s, especially with John Carpenter.
Hmm.
So I wanted the back cover to have the feeling of credits moving up and the way that that would feel in terms of the coloring of the white, the blackness of the black, the fonts, the spacing, the way that it read, the way that the lines felt as they moved. In terms of the graphics, they are actually old video still shots. My friend Nicholas Reed, who's in a band called Windbreaker here in Chicago, he has this giant synth laboratory in his loft. It's really a wonderful thing. And Brian and I have spent some time there. I've spent a lot of time there. But he has this late 70s, early 80s scope that takes video signals from whatever you want. In this case, we used VHS tapes. And it puts the tape through this scope and it sort of reinterprets it in this video wave form. And you're able to manipulate that in real time. And I found that the motion of this in such an analog way and having no digital whatsoever involved, you can call it crude, but I think it was really beautiful. And I remember running 2001 Space Odyssey, running Kubrick through this scope, and these still shots that you see on the record happen to be Kubrick shots that had this symmetry and this motion to it that I felt one day we could use as a band. And I began to think of what that would look like as a natural evolution of the way that they move on a record. So it made sense. And once I got the green light from Brian, I really went with it. And I like when record covers attract you when they have no copy, nothing's selling you on the cover, nothing is trying to convince you.
Right.
It's just the art. You take the people out of the way, you take the band name out of the way, take all copy out of the way. What does the art have to say, and how does that relate to the music you're listening to? And allow either the inside or the back cover or the spine to give you some type of narration.
Sure.
That
Kind
was
of like Joy Division's Unknown Pleasures.
Well, that's the next thing. So then I also wanted to incorporate my love for that era of music, of British music.
Right.
And sort of putting those components together, that sort of Joy Division into New Order transition, sort of 4 AD, early 80s art, rock.
Yeah.
Art
And then obviously
feel.
the retro nature of the actual analog, that process that you use to kind of capture
and
these
that's
video
exactly
stills.
right. And then having copy and the flow of text to sort of give it some nuts and bolts, and putting those together, I couldn't be more satisfied. In fact, I've already started just kind of ruminating on ideas of what the next record could look like based off of stuff we're writing now, and also been talking to our guitarist Dimitri Rakuba about that, what that looks like, what that makes us feel. We're always sort of thinking ahead. We can be a little bit impatient with the creative this, and that's okay. But
Huh.
yeah, I'm already kind of thinking of what that looks like with what we're doing
Wait,
now.
okay, so are you the artist? Is that what you're telling me?
For that record, yes, it was, yes.
Oh, okay.
And then a really good friend of mine, Rogelio Gomez, and another friend named Matthew Plain. I had these ideas, I had these sketches, I had the exact font, color, location, everything, but I really wanted them to help me in terms of layout, in terms of how exactly we would put things out, how exactly the size of line, the size of font. And they were really great to work with in terms of just the general layout and just, sort of being your director of photography, and you're sort of like directing and putting things, in their elements, because not only is the record reflecting that, but a lot of the other stuff that we have right now in terms of posters that we use for going on tour, in terms of anything else that we have, that the cassette design is different from the record.
Mm-hmm.
The CD is different from the LP. So there's a thread between all these elements, and I really enjoy it. Like, I enjoy putting that together and seeing it, holding it. And we're waiting for the test presses now. The vinyl of the record's coming out it ships out in July. So I'm just waiting for those test presses. They should be coming in probably 5 or 6 weeks, and I can't wait to hold it. Mm-hmm. We decided to go with matte finish instead of something glossy. I mean, it's just every bit of experience. It might be trivial to some, but to me, it was just really important to have that first statement.
Sure. No, it's a great kind of tactile thing. It's a portion of the expression for sure.
It is. It really is. I think that was lost sometime between the late 90s into the early 2010s. That was lost for a while because we are entering a singles economy, and that's fine. That's great. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right. Digital too.
Yeah, and I just wanted to have a voice for the artifact. I think a lot of people. So
yeah, no, it's coming back in a big way, and I think for that reason, I think people have maybe even acknowledged a little bit that they have lost connection with music and what is kind of art, you know, and so kind of getting into vinyl records is kind of getting back to that.
It is
a little bit,
and now it's the biggest seller. It's how bands are. Smaller bands are surviving on the road. I mean, it's great. I mean, my daughter loves Billie Eilish. I love that I can go to the record store and buy Billie Eilish vinyl. I mean, we have her records. We have all 3 on vinyl.
Yeah.
They sound great. Cool. And I love that. That Lana Del Rey can make records and people are buying. Taylor Swift makes vinyl. People buy them.
She ruined it for everybody, but it's great that you can have it on vinyl. All right. Well, let's move on. So I was going to skip a couple more songs. I was going to skip Surfing on a Rocket and Another Day, not for any particular reason, just lack of information on them. So the next song is Alpha Beta Gaga. And you know what? Now that I think about it, I think maybe I was incorrect. I think maybe this was the song that they wanted to donate to Madonna.
Really?
Which I thought it was weird, because I think when I read it, I was just like, oh, it's funny that it has the word Gaga in it, and this is kind of pre-Lady Gaga.
Sure.
So,
Let me also check Brian's notes on this one second, okay?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Brian says this: I love Air for this. They make tracks as somber and emotionally effective as Venus, and then as an instrumental that features whistling and treats it as serious. I saw this tour in Chicago, a room of people whistling, hearing the melody of the interactive song.
That was this song, Alpha Beta Gaga.
Yeah, that is this song, actually. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's what confused me when we were talking about Mike Mills, because you said something about the whistling, and it's this song that's got the whistling in it. Okay.
Right.
All right, because I'm only going off memory. That I don't know this record too well. Like, I have to kind of keep on listening to it. So Alpha Beta Gaga, amongst some of the instrumentation used for this recording, it's noted that a shamisen is used, or a shamisen.
Yeah, what is that?
It's a delicate 3-string Japanese instrument.
So that's not a banjo. Okay.
It's similar to that in style. I mean, depending on.
Yeah, I would say in terms of like percussive resonance, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, definitely. They can be different. They vary depending on the style of the instrument, I guess. Like, they can kind of vary in scale, but essentially 3-string instrument. Yeah, you play with a plectrum, so fairly traditional to Japanese styles of music, you know. So it leads me to wonder, did you use any odd instrumentation for your new record?
Well, we did, but unfortunately, you won't hear it. So, in the song "Knockoff," we decided to locate the closest pipe organ that we could find without sounding too Arcade Fire-ish.
Hmm.
Because that was a big thing that they were doing at the time when they made Neon Bible and when they made the Suburbs. And we decided to talk to the fine folk over at Moody Bible Institute. It's a college here down by the lake in the city. And we knew that they had one of the last remaining tuned operating pipe organs that was still used every single week. So we figured that was only natural that we can go to them. And they were very generous and gave us endless time to go there. And we set up shop. We set up a studio inside the chapel, which is very large. It's beautiful. And Dmitry Rakuba had played these long pads, these long dramatic lines underneath Knockoff. So cool. And I've even talked with Brian, how do we bring that back? Can there be a version with it? Can we do something with that? We never worked with that before.
Yeah.
That's a different beast, man. That is a whole different beast. And if you're not careful, pipe organ can really dictate the emotional state of the entire song. You can visit in as a piece, but because of the weight and the volume and the low end that it presents to the song, to the mix, that it can be a little overbearing. And unfortunately, we went back and forth, and I was really an advocate of it, but Brian had some really good points. And we didn't want to make Castlevania. We didn't want to make something so vampire-ish. And it did have that feeling to it. But at the same time, man, to be in the room and to see Dmitry playing that and feel it over, our song on headphones, what a treat. And again, maybe some point people will get to hear it. In terms of other instruments, I mean, we had several percussive devices that we used, and we used at one point on Olivet, we had originally tracked it. What was it? What did we use? Well, Dmitry was playing piano, and I was playing vibraphone. And that song sort of happened in a moment. It was an unscripted, unwritten moment that happened in the studio with Nick Brosty at Shape Shop when we were getting together for some final overdubs. And it just sort of happened. We were waiting while Nick was setting up mics in between takes of something else, a different song. It just happened. There was this beautiful 3 or 4 quality of what Dmitry and myself were doing. And it was really beautiful to hear it that way. And then later on, Brian put acoustic guitar over it, but hearing vibraphone in our music was something we had no idea was going to happen. I mean, some of my favorite indie music has vibraphone, and you listen to some of those Jim O'Rourke records. When you listen, I think to the middle two, Insignificance and Halfway to a Three-Way, they have these really beautiful, band geek vibraphone moments, which is really, I believe it's either Glenn Cochi or that is, if it's not Glenn Cochi, then it's John McIntyre playing the vibes. They sound beautiful, and I just wanted to have something on our record that included that, that sort of had that different feel, that didn't have the meat and potatoes rock and roll take. Not to say that everything we do, but I just wanted to have some sort of relief. And I felt putting that song at the end of the record gave it that relief. And I can, and it was fun. It was light. It was pretty
nice.
And no vocals, and that's, again, we can relate it back to what we're talking about with the song, with what air does.
Right. And then obviously kind of contributing to the idea or this concept of like kind of motion pictures being movies.
Absolutely.
Like this is like the third act, or this is kind of like the resolve, like the
these are the end credits. This is the
That's right. Okay. So before I forget it, the pipe organ on Knockoff.
Yes. I mean, it's not there anymore. I mean,
I know. Here's an idea.
Sure.
Maybe if you can, I don't know what your kind of touring capacity is going to be like with your band. Like what who could possibly do something like this? But what if you were to just incorporate it into like a sampler or something, and so that way you can kind of like play it in a loop, or like like just like play a portion of it, like
We
maybe
can
intro,
reinterpret it or take a section. Yeah, I'm not opposed to
right?
that. That's
Just kind
actually
of
really good.
fade it in, fade it out, at for just a moment, either before the song, maybe somewhere in the middle, depending on how you can make it work or something like that. Just so it's
Well,
just so it's
we
there.
have enough fucking technology up there to make that happen. So I don't see
Okay,
why I don't
there
see
you
why
go.
not. Yeah,
Well, there's
that's a
an
good
idea.
idea. I like that.
Okay, well, so there's an idea for that. You can try that, and then
And I'm going to mention that to Brian. I will mention that to him and see what he thinks about that. That's cool.
okay, yeah, yeah. I mean, hey, it just came to me, so whatever. If you can use it, by all means, go for it.
Sure.
So then, all right, let's keep on moving. It's gonna skip biological, and then so that just leaves us to the last song, "Alone in Kyoto," which you know, let me see. Not really anything to say about this song specifically. I mean, you know, um, obviously the song was used in the Lost in Translation soundtrack. Obviously, the band has experience with scoring music, scoring film, and their music is very much like that anyway. Actually, as a matter of fact, this is a great album in which has been described as an elegantly moody soundtrack music for imaginary films, which kind of goes along with, I believe, what you said earlier in our discussion. So, in closing, what would you hope people will say about your new album, Motion in Pictures?
That they can draw different experiences from their past, present, and what they hope to be a future from it. I hope that they can get us out of the way and relate to what the melodies do for them. Going back to a Girl Kyoto, it's a really interesting scene. Scarlett Johansson's character decides to finally venture out of her bubble of the hotel, her bubble of isolatory beginning resentment against a husband who is pursuing his career, and she's sort of a tag along. And she finally steps out on her own, and things are starting to unfold, and she's starting to think of things and starting to see other human beings, other individuals, and seeing how she relates to them without having to be represented or being introduced by her husband photographer. You see this sort of transition of introspect, and you see a quest for peace. You see a search for oneself, identity. I think that happens a lot when people decide to take walks to places they've never been to before. I think that happens when people decide to travel alone. There are benefits to traveling alone, and of course, there are many benefits to traveling with people, especially people that you've known for a while. But in that particular scene, I was really moved by that, and I want people to listen to us, hopefully on headphones, and relate whatever song they wish to what's going on with themselves in that search for identity. A lot of those lyrics on that record, Brian was going through a lot, and I feel like I think Jeff Buckley said it best for Grace. He put all these things in a coffin, and Grace was the process of nailing it shut, of just having this sort of a tomb, and you're taking all these experiences and lessons and failures and victories up to that point A, and then point B and on is sort of, what do you do after that? And that's why we have Sketches from My Sweetheart the Drunk. But yeah, there's just this sort of coffin, this lyrical coffin of things that Brian was figuring out in real time as our friendship began to move long before we made a record together. And I'm glad that he held on to it. I'm glad that those songs, I think 4 of the songs from those first sessions back in 2014 made the cut. They made the record. And that's not easy to do. It's not easy to hold on to lyrics or a set of lyrics or songs for that long, believe in them for that long, where they wind up making it onto an album a decade later, a decade plus. I'm glad it did. I'm really, really glad it did. I also hope that people dig into these small moments on the album that have nothing to do with lyrics. I hope that people can feel the record moving towards a resolve at the end, because it is. You know, there's sort of this purging. There's sort of this. There are some exorcisms happening, but then there's a calm. There's a peace. There is a hope. There is not a lost. You haven't lost yourself.
Right.
You survived. And I think after the last 3 years, we've all survived from so many things, not just the pandemic, but I
Right.
think the last 3 years, politically and
spiritually, emotionally,
I think have really woken a lot of people up, and it forced them to escape from the noise. I think a lot of times people had no choice but to be in silence, or to be in relative silence. And what do you do with that? We have a lot of things that surround us with noise, and surround us with advice, and surround us with decision. And oftentimes we have all this information, and it just creates more indecision. And I hope that people really feel a bit of a lift. I hope that doesn't sound so grandiose either. I hope that people can relate to things, you know, from the first song on. I hope that they listen to Parallax and feel like this is the entrance into something a little bit different,
yeah. No, I hear you. Hey, Brian's back with us.
This call was shorter
Brian,
than I
you're back.
anticipated. So
Brian, just in time for the final question. Can I ask you? Can I ask you this question?
Right on.
So, you know, we were just kind of doing the closing, and essentially we were describing. Well, I'll just give you the question. So, I think people have described this album by Air as elegantly moody soundtrack music for imaginary films. So I'm just curious that, like, what would you hope people will have to say about your new album, Motion and Picture?
Wow.
I know.
I think that I hope people say that a few things. One, that it is cohesive, that it feels like not one long song, but I hope people listen to the whole album and feel like they've gone on a journey. I hope they feel like it's all part of one movement, you know, one nuanced movement. I hope that they say that it is, they're not going to say it's simple, elegant or otherwise. I hope people think that it feels like listening to a movie, listening to a story.
Yeah, no, it's you're not far off from what Shawn has said. And with that being said, I think that the choice that you made today for this album was an excellent one because of its kind of connection to motion picture and the movies, because they're a group that has been known for doing soundtrack work, for scoring and composing, and then your music itself kind of compared to it. Also, and this album specifically, I mean, not only is it called Motion and Picture, and I'm sure that's because of a connection and to this theme of movies, because like Shawn was describing to me earlier, even the layout of the artwork is kind of inspired by motion pictures, you know, directors and so forth. So yeah, I think that you have achieved that. I think that is what people will pull away from it as they listen to it, because it is a good piece of work in that regard, as far as what you were going for and trying to attempt, and you've succeeded in that, and kind of being a pretty great piece of work, conceptual work.
Thank you.
Yeah, we wanted to make music that people could see, if that makes any sense, and that, to take it a step further, that they can see themselves in it.
Right, and I think that's exactly what I was trying to get at, is that music for people, whether they know it or not, and this idea of like soundtrack and soundscape type of stuff, it's like it doesn't dictate your life, but it becomes the soundtrack to your life. You know, like every time you listen to something, I know I have this for myself, where I'll listen to something, and then the next time I hear it, I can remember where it was the last time I heard it.
For
And
sure.
that being experiential as well as like, like what was I going through at the time that I heard that?
Yeah. I remember when Radiohead's Kid A came out. I remember listening to it for the first time with my headphones on, leaving a temp
Jesus
job in
Christ.
Chicago as I was
Yeah,
like walking, crossing the street, crossing Michigan Avenue in like
sure.
the Gold Coast. I just remember it like it was yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly the thing. And so, I mean, I think that your music will kind of touch people the same way.
Well,
My
that
God,
would
thank
be
you. I hope.
really the highest compliment. That would be like the you know, what we can hope for.
Yeah. And so now just in closing, I know that I've asked you guys about like kind of touring. I don't know if you were there, Brian. Oh yeah,
Hmm.
you were. Yeah, you were. But the album, I mean, now that you've described it to me better as far as like what the packaging will be like, obviously you're doing vinyl pre-orders now, and so the vinyl is coming. Um, Aside from what you've described to me, is there anything else kind of about the vinyl that we can look forward to? Like, is there any kind of like color variants that you're doing or anything like that?
There is, yeah. There's going to be a limited edition um, color process swatch variants. I believe we'll probably also put out a number of our test pressings too.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but yeah, I think there will be some little treats, some variants
Right.
in that. We're working with Smash Plastic, which is a newer pressing plant here in Chicago. We need more of them. Jeff Tweedy of Wilco has just sort of partnershiped with Smash Plastic, now DBPM, his label for Wilco, and all the their satellite projects. Bands that they work with as well are also going through Smash Plastic, which I think is great. I was really happy to hear about Metallica making their move to purchase a plant.
Hmm.
The more, the better. And
Yeah.
Smash has done a really fantastic job quickly of becoming a real big part of the recording sort of foundation of what bands are doing here. It's great to have it here. It makes it so quick. A lot of times, when I made records, we would go through either Poland or Lithuania,
Right.
so cross country. So you couldn't have the sort of that hands-on view of not only the process, but to see the quality of what's going on.
Sure.
So
Sure.
we're excited to work with them, and who knows, maybe if the record keeps going on, there'll be different versions. I don't, in terms of the way that we press it. It's exciting to think of what that could look like. But yeah, I'm really happy to work with them, and like I was saying before, in 5 or 6 weeks, things are going to get it's going to get real. It's just
Yeah.
going to get real, and we're holding on to it.
Right.
It's that all the bands have to wait the same amount of time right now, but that just is what it is until the economy changes, until people take more initiative, until the bigger labels decide to put their money where their mouth is and become part of this.
Right.
And
Okay.
hopefully they will.
Yeah. Well, agreed, man, because I am suffering through it right now myself. So
How long did you wait?
I'm still waiting, and it's been almost a year.
Yeah. Oh,
Wow.
Yeah, not great. Not great at all. But whatever. It is what it is. Fingers crossed that it comes sooner rather than later.
Sure.
And same for you guys. I wish you the best with the vinyl. I hope that it comes to you right on time, and that it looks beautiful. I'm sure that it will, and that that's the vinyl pre-orders take off.
Well,
Thank you.
regardless, we'll make sure to send you a copy regardless. I mean, we'll send you a couple copies, but look forward to
sure.
you
Thank you.
getting listening to it, enjoying it in that format. It's going to be exciting, and then we can talk about it.
Yeah. If you're coming through town, by all means, please get in touch with me. Let me know. I will be happy to be there, and I'll save you some shipping expenses.
There's that
Right
too.
Well, guys, it's been a wonderful pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for the record. I think it's a great one. Thank you for the conversation. Also a great one. And I hope to hear from you soon.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Absolutely,
Thanks
guys.
for your time. Thank you.
Vinyl and Vision is a Psychic Static production. theme song written and performed by Jeff Robbins of 123 Astronaut